Hello, guys, and welcome back to Try Me Through Revolution of Your Mind and Energy. Thank you for being in this small YouTube channel. Um, Today, I'm gonna create a video called "Your Therapist Abusing You." I was inspired by my therapist to create this video for you guys because a lot of us are not very aware when those type of things are happening. I see there is someone watching. I don't know if this is possible. I was thinking that this video is private, but if somebody is able to see it, thank you guys for being here. I'm gonna talk about therapist abuse. And because as a therapist, before I start, do like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for being part of Try Me Through Revolution of Your Mind and Energy. And here in this YouTube channel, you're going to find me talking about different type of topics, about different type of experiences or things that I philosophize about or think about that normal people don't talk about it, that you wouldn't find a lot of people philosophize on those topics, as for example, your therapist being abusive. So when I say being abusive, I'm gonna go in a detail. I know I'm not dressed up for you a lot today. I didn't put a lot of effort in looking beautiful, but I appreciate you listening to what I have to say and forgiving me if I am not so, how to say, dress up. This means that you can listen what I have to say. So the number one thing that I want to talk about is something. It's a research. There is a research based on how people decide if they shall obey on somebody request or no. And based on this research, there is several books that you can read. There is several military tactics and so on. But it has been proved that the social status of somebody or their, how to say, their position in the society affect your brain, and subconsciously you can be more propensus to obey to someone or something higher their status is, even if they make you an appropriate request. There are many books that you can read about that, about how your psyche work, and so on, because subconsciously, let's say this person is doctor or specialist of therapy or psychology specialist or anything like that, that you're not. I'm not a specialist by psychology, and this is my work line, apology for that. So subconsciously, this person that obviously following some studies have more knowledge than you do, uh, they are going subconsciously to have a higher position in your brain, and you will be more propensus to submit yourself to those people, to obey to their request. The the higher the social status of someone, let's say doctor of psychology, compared to a cleaning lady, no, the higher the social status is, more propensus subconsciously you as a human will be to recognize their opinion or to obey or to submit yourself or even second thought yourself because of this person's position and because of this person's opinion or situation, no. And now I want to talk about something very funny. I know you're gonna believe or maybe think that I'm a little bit cuckoo, but this is okay. I wanna discuss a tactic. It's a war tactic implemented by Hitler. It's called Blitzkrieg. It's a German word, and this tactic consists in surprising your enemy with doing something unexpected. When you do something unexpected, the result would be that the other person would be in shock, and while they're shocked by this situation that they never predict may happen, You have the time to win them over. So why I discuss this tactic here and right now is because no one tell you what to do if your therapist abuse you. Nobody talk about this. Nobody discuss this. You don't even think that this is possible. Correct? This is just like a this mystery topics. You're no, this is not possible, right? So if this happen, of course you're gonna be in shock. You would not know what to do, and because of their social status, subconsciously will be propensive to obey or to stay longer in this uncomfortable situation. And the number two thing that would happen, they would be the shame to admit, especially to yourself, and number two, to others. How can you admit to others that your therapist is abusive? Well, you're already crazy to go to therapy. This is the social. A lot of countries have this prejudice toward therapy. So socially, they're like, oh, yeah, she goes to therapy. She must be crazy, right? And then if you say, oh, my therapist is abusive, well, you're already crazy. Who cares? Why this matter? That's the challenges that you kind of confront with if you even want to talk about it with someone. It's so hard because it's so difficult to find someone that you can be vulnerable at that level to discuss these topics and ask if that's a normal way for a therapist, because I am guessing whoever does therapy doesn't put it right here, hey, I'm in therapy for rape, for example. Nobody want to talk about this or make it like a public knowledge. We don't want to talk about it, why you're in therapy, or I have post-traumatic, or I am bipolar, or whatever problem I have. Obviously I'm not going to discuss it openly with everyone. Said that, I'm going to talk about one different type of abuse. I have emotional abuse, then I have verbal, psychological, and physical. Although I believe that here in the USA, physical abuse, it's not something that can happen to you. That would be expressed in some form of a mixture of abuses. I still wanted to talk about, even though it's like, oh, that's not possible. That would never happen. You never know. Let's guess not happening. Number one, emotional abuse. I will mention several things that you may notice during session that your therapist become, and some of those crazy reactions could be therapy tactics, or it could be just that your therapist is not very well mentally. The fact that someone is therapist doesn't mean that they are healthy mentally. Unfortunately, a lot of therapists are not very well mentally, and a lot of people who have serious psychological issues study psychology, trying to figure out themselves in order with this study process to figure out themselves and fantasize or believe that they can help others, which in some cases happen, in other doesn't. But I have a small notes here, so I don't want to forget anything. Your therapist, for example, could be very irritable, very annoyed, angry, disappointed, aggressive, making you feel guilty or wrong, or just being frustrated and just impatient. And my first therapist was like that. Um, and that was very odd experience. It was a lady, and she was from New York. She was completely out of her mind. I think I last, I don't want to lie to you, I believe it was 4 sessions. But let me tell you how this affects you. If the therapist is irritable or frustrated, you try to understand and try to content them. Try to maybe when somebody's so irritated or frustrated, you're trying to see what's wrong. You're trying to understand if you did something wrong, or there's different things that when somebody is like that around you, that make you feel, obviously it make you feel uncomfortable, and obviously it make you think, what did I do wrong? It's just not okay. The number two thing is if they're angry or aggressive. And anger could be expressed with raising the voice, or being like, it could be through gestures, like breaking something, or there are many ways to express anger, and there are many ways to use anger as a tool to manipulate others, especially if they're not doing what you want them to do, or they're not obeying or not under your control. There are many tactics that manipulative people use, using anger with it. um, and one of those is also like making you feel like you did something wrong, or you make the wrong decision. I'm apologizing, I forget to turn off my working line. It's just happening, it's there. We're gonna let it ring for some time and we're gonna continue. So angry, it's affecting you. In some cases, make you shut down. In a lot of cases, people try to contend to a second date and make their therapist proud of them, or something like that. This happening subconsciously, because if they're angry and frustrated and irritable, this means they're disappointed. You don't want them to be disappointed. Some people, I personally shut down when someone is aggressive with me, but you don't want them to be disappointed. You want them to be proud. And because of this subconscious desire to be a good person, to make the right decision, a lot of people try to content their therapists. This is subconsciously, because they don't want nobody to be disappointed. You want people to be proud of you. This is natural desire, right? Guilty and wrong, this is another things that they make you feel through judging something, or making you feel uneasy about something, trying to push you towards certain decision, doing something, um, to do the right thing. Obviously, who doesn't want to do the right thing, even though it doesn't feel right to you, or you're not sure what's right, you still subconsciously try to do this. And then, if they're very frustrated with you, you're not so sure, and you start to have this subtle confusion with sessions. You're not so sure. There is no clear answer. And now I want to talk a little bit about actions. This little bit more active abuse from the side of the therapist. For example, verbal, emotional plus manipulation. I put it like that because it's just not one thing. Somebody say scream and get louder, and this out the mixture of it, having in mind that you submit yourself to the knowledge of this person who should be healthy, or you presuppose that they are healthy, you suppose they are mentally sane because of their education, yelling at you. I had this therapist, she was like giving me orders to do things, the one that I went in for session. And when I didn't do it, she would be very, very, very angry. She would put her hands on the hips and make these very angry expressions. Like I was afraid of this person. And obviously, I was feeling there was something wrong, but I was thinking this because I'm crazy and therapy is not for me. I don't even know how people can do therapy. This is insane. I can't do this to myself again, I said after several of those sessions. The number two is rejection to your thoughts, ideas, or um, the rejection could be in different forms. Of course, they're not going to tell you, oh, you're so wrong. Let me tell you what's rejection could be interrupting you and telling you something else than what you're saying. Interjecting something else, telling you what's correct, what's appropriate. There are different types of rejection. It isn't always like saying straightforward, oh, you're wrong. This is so effing up. Rejection could be very subtle and very overt in therapy, because rejection could be never giving you a straight answer for something. Okay, for example, do you think I did wrong here? And if they tell you, for example, my therapist of 2 years that I just stopped doing therapy, she was like, well, what do you think here? Me as therapist, I can't tell you. Why can't you tell me your opinion? You don't have to agree with me. I don't need you to agree with me. I was just interested in another opinion. So having this constantly repeating in your session, it makes you hang there and you feel more alone than without therapy. Because therapy should give you this base and strong foundation to rebuild yourself. It shouldn't let you hang in the air philosophizing about this phone is driving me crazy. I'm so sorry that it's ringing. This is when people doesn't understand that if you don't take the phone, you don't take it, and there is no sense of them continue to ring. Um, Another action, which is also form of abuse, is called humiliation. Humiliation, and I don't know why I noticed that I also Google it. Most common type of therapist abuse and comparison come as number one. When you know your therapist is abusing you, when they compare you to other clients. I had a situation with my therapist maybe for the last 5 months. Every time during sessions, she would tell me that other clients do this. My other clients use the session differently. I didn't ask you what your other clients do. I don't care what your other clients do. I said, okay, I personally don't care what other clients decide to do with their session. I don't see why this should be my business. But her doing this several times during our sessions, each session in the last 5 months, it made me feel like I was doing something wrong in the sessions. And I told her, if you want the session differently, you can suggest that, but if this is working for me, I don't understand why would I change the way I do therapy. Well, of course, my opinion was ignored, but let's go to another emotional or verbal or tactic of abuse. Ignore of your boundaries. For example, ignore of your privacy, enmeshment, rejection, denial, control. I will talk about a little bit about these boundaries. Now, a few months ago, the war started in Ukraine, and when I was a little child in my country, I was about 9 or 10 or 11. Me and my friend, we will go to the meeting against communism. We will go to all these revolution things, as you have seen in the movies, The Dreamer, Communisti Jew, Communisti Down, and all these things. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go to protest against communism when I was 9. So, because my country was transitioning from communist dictature towards the democracy, I see a lot of things that a lot of people doesn't see. A lot of things that are not very safe to see, that I should have not seen, that are dangerous, and I think that I was exposed to think that a child shouldn't be exposed. Said that, I didn't want to remember this in a much detail during the sessions because I already had other things to work on my plate. And I state that very openly to my therapist that I don't want to talk and work about with my memories about this war, with this situation, because I tell her I can't lose my mind. I can't remember this. I can't have it all on the plate and remain sane. I can just take a small piece of problem at the time. This is too much for me. And my therapist ignored that. She just, I don't want to say she said, oh, yeah, yeah. She said, yeah, of course, sure. But every time she will questioning me and pushing me to talk about this, how this affect my post-traumatic stress, all these things. If I tell you I don't want to talk, You as therapist should say okay and move on. You should not try, but yeah, but let me tell you about this. No, because you haven't cried, and if you don't cry, there must be something wrong with you. Maybe I just didn't feel like crying, you know what I mean? So ignoring a request, but not like she ignored it one time. She continued pushing there for the next few months until I stopped doing therapy with this person. Um, Control. My first therapist used to do this. She would be like, "Oh, you do this." I've been in. I see this person. His name is Tadios for about 4 years, and he is the most abusive person I ever met. Of course, back then I was not understanding what was happening to me. I didn't know, and this person was abusing me in every possible way, including physical abuse, and I was convincing me that I am wrong and that I am responsible for his bad actions. On top of that, and I remember this therapist give me order, and when I tell her that we talk on the phone, she got furious. She got so angry. I was afraid of this lady, honestly. She was so angry. Anger is a form of abuse. Your therapist shouldn't be angry. I think your therapist should guide you to understand yourself. Another thing that they use, diminishing what you communicate or ignore it. Ignore a request. For example, I request not to talk about the war, and every time during session, 1 or 2 times, I will have asked questions about the war. Or I request I don't want to talk about this certain situation, and every time during session, this person will push there to talk about this. Uh, just ignoring your request. For example, something makes you feel uncomfortable, say, okay, this makes me feel uncomfortable, please don't do it. They insist. She insisted. I don't want to talk about it. This therapist, I remember there was this session. I said, I don't want to discuss some topics. She said, oh, yeah, you don't have to talk about it. But if you don't talk about it, this means there is something wrong with you. She will manipulate you. Well, it means that you block your feelings. And if you block your feelings, you're stuck. There would be this pushing you and disrespecting the fact that you don't want to discuss something. I remember this therapist made me cry several times and ignore that I was crying, continue questioning me like I had to give her the right answer. I had to deliver something. There was this expectation of her wanting something, but I didn't understand what was it. And I was feeling that there was something wrong and I couldn't quite grasp what was it. Um, Depressing. This depressing is the next one. For example, asking a question one time and you said, okay, you know what, this is not the time, I don't want to discuss this today. uh, as this case I share, I started crying. She was pressing me for 40 minutes to answer some question, and I give every possible answer that come to my head, and then she continued pressuring me, telling me that there was something wrong with my answer. And in the end I tell her, I don't know what kind of answer do you want me to give you. I don't know what's the right answer. What do you want to hear from me? Whatever makes you feel uncomfortable is wrong. Okay, another thing in this pressing tactic that I just described is ignoring your feelings. If you cry, there should be no more pressing and pushing. I remember I tell her, you're torturing me. Why don't you stop to do this? Why are you doing this? And this person would laugh, which means that she's sadical. So you cannot suppose that your therapist is a sadist, but this can happen. In this case was a girl and she was a little bit sadical. What is sadism? Sadism is a person who experiences pleasure when they see other people or other creatures suffering. With kids, they normally torture animals, but when they grow up, people start to feel pleasure torturing other humans. This makes them feel successful. There is people like that, unfortunately, and this could be your therapist. In this case, I feel like if you see another creature crying, you shouldn't be laughing. This is inappropriate. This is demonstration of lack of emotional sanity, and she is not emotionally healthy in this case. Not only, but she's trying to push you to make you suffer more and to respond to your request to stop, she is laughing. What this make you understand? This person is crazy. They do not know what is healthy boundaries. They do not know what means empathy. And of course, this therapist didn't start to be like this from the beginning. I am talking to you. I know this therapist 2 years, and slowly, I see this pattern to unravel during our therapy sessions. Um, Differences or need to be differences. I'm sorry, there is something happened here. I don't even know how this thing happened. Okay. So I can be hurt. Okay. After this very uncomfortable session, I said to my therapist, or you stop to do this, or we stop therapy. This is not okay. If I request something, use therapist. You should know what's mean respecting a boundary. Right? And to this, guess what? The therapist decide to be heard. How dare I request something like that? I can't request something like there was this. I am here and I give you orders and you hear down and you gotta obey to it. So if your therapist ignore one time is enough, because if they do it one time they will repeat it. I guarantee you, people are not purposely sick for your own being. And I think if somebody is aggressive during session with all these negative emotions inside, it's not because they are applying tactic, it's because they are simply aggressive human beings, and they apply this in therapy with excuses. As abusive men abuse women and call them names, same thing. They find a good reason for it, correct? Oh, you deserve it. Oh, yes, you're real fat. Even if I'm real fat, I didn't ask you, what do you think? Am I fat? Correct? So said that whoever is abusive, they will find a good reason for that. The same thing with your therapist. So in this case, I just now I read something about therapists that need to lie in 90% of their sessions. Later on, I confront my therapist about this hurt feeling, and in her opinion, I should have expressed some empathy toward her. So this person uh, disrespect my boundaries, push me, made me cry, and hurt me. And when I asked her to stop hurting me, she laughed on me. And to all of this abuse, she wants me to have empathy toward her. So when I tell her that my therapist shouldn't be hurt, but should act more appropriately, she got even more offended because she's simply not a healthy human being. And to this, she responded to me that she was doing so-called interactions. In her opinion, I should have expressed empathy toward her being hurt and create emotional bond with her. You cannot create bond with somebody who abuse you. Even if this is your therapy, this is gonna be just a very bad example of bond, will be unhealthy one. And you will start applying unhealthy bonds with people that abuse you just because in practice this is what you experience with your therapist, unfortunately and sadly, Okay, verbal abuse. The verbal abuse, I think, or form of it, or lack of there is a lot of this thing like a lack of communication. I notice in therapists, but just not caring about you. But it's a very subtle verbal abuse, because I don't think there is a lot of therapists that will openly call you a bitch or something like that. They would not call you names, of course. But I will give you example. And this called withholding. Withholding is a form of abuse. In some part, they consider form of verbal abuse, or could be form of emotional abuse. Either way is abuse because it damages you. Ignoring your question, ignore you. You don't exist. I don't hear you. Your question isn't important enough. You're not that important. Neglect. emotional neglect, verbal neglect, not responding, not replying. I remember I asked my therapist 10 times the same questions in 10 email and there was not one response. This is abuse. They should be very clear, very, even not pleasant. It should be a response. And if somebody is not responding you, they're abusing you. Ignoring a request or boundary. It could be physical boundary, don't come too close, uh, don't shout on me, don't question me like I'm some criminal. That was my request toward my therapist. She ignored it. Very critical. Oh, yeah, this is wrong, you're wrong, there is something wrong with you. Insisting for an answer, especially if you respond at once, but no, but this not exactly, no, but what do you think, but no, what do you feel, but why? If you answer once and then say, okay, that's for me for now, don't push there, they should stop and respect that. Ordering you to do things. Ignore a question, ignore to reply. All these forms of neglect show you that they don't care about you, that they don't love you, that you're not important enough as a human being. I don't think that therapists should love you, but I think they should care. And when I say care, I mean it in a human way, care enough to reply. Not only reply, but to respond, because they can reply to your email and ignore your question. They can reply you verbally, but still ignore what you ask for. They can refuse to give you clarity and make this confusion in your head. This is all form of withholding, neglect, and I believe it's abuse. Just all of these things, all the mixture of these things that they may do, it makes this feeling of being uncomfortable, being there is something wrong, you cannot quite understand what is it, but it's happening, right? um Compare you. This is called psychological abuse. All of these forms of abuse can be put under psychological abuse, even the pressure, emotional pressing, all of that, because it affects you mentally. And why is such a strong form of abuse? It's because there is nobody that talk about this. Nobody would tell you what it's like. There is no protection of this. Nobody will offer you support if this happen, correct? You can't seek for second opinion. Of course you seek for second opinion, but I mean when you are in this situation, you're like, what is going on here? Compare you to other clients. This is something that this therapist will do, and I didn't understand why. Not only, but I find it very strange to talk about this person's feelings in my session. This might say, I'm not your therapist. I tell her, I don't feel like discussing your feeling. I'm not interested in your feelings. This is my session, and I want to talk about what is important to me. Your feelings are not in that thing. I don't want to talk about it. And this person again, so when people compare you to others, usually is to put you down, diminish you value, and tell you that you're not valuable. But what is happening when this happened in therapy, it washes off your personality. It makes you subconsciously tells you that you have to be like others do it better, think what others do, like constantly directing you to the idea that you're something that is not quite okay. The pressure you is normally to deliver, to do something, tell you to do, or they're angry, hostile, no validation, any kind of pressure, even if it's a pressure to respond a question, is subconsciously kind of making you feel like you're a failure, that there is something wrong with you. And violation of a physical boundary. Um, there is different cases of that, but I'm gonna talk for about more soft ones. I'm not talking about touching or anything like that. I'm talking about smashing, banging, screaming, gestures, um, ordering you to do something, positioning the hands like on the waist or on the hips, or this kind of a very body language speaking ways of you have to obey to me. And if you look policemen, I'm daring you, go and watch a video with policemen. They do position their hands on the hips, on the waist. This is all positions of aggression, physically, verbally, body language aggression. This they're typical gestures that you could study. I studied this in my first master called social, no, it was more comportamental sociology for 4 years. And yes, I did a lot about study body language and different things like that to use it in business and how to like conclude business negotiations through reading people, which was very interesting. So said that a lot of those books that talk about body language, there is certain positions that talk about power. Yes, I did study about this quite some time, even how somebody will position a cup of coffee and move it in the space closer to the other person, how they will cross their legs or the space that they're gonna occupy. All this talk about power position. Yeah, and sometimes even the colors that they're gonna wear. Me, what color I should wear to make somebody feel safe and to make them feel like they can trust me and to make them sign the contract with me. This is very, very interesting topic, you know. But said that there are different situations with your therapist that make you like the ones that I described here, that overall sometimes you don't have ability to analyze them, to look them through and be like, oh yeah, that's the one, that's the thing, this is what make me feel like, oh, this is the one. Sometimes you just don't, you quiet don't understand, you feel something but you don't know what is that. And this was exactly my case. I was feeling there was something wrong. Yes, I know I need therapy. Yes, I do still need therapy. Yes, I know I have post traumatic stress disorder. Yes, I know it's not something that I can cure. Yes, I have insomnia and all this. I have bad dreams. And yes, I do need therapy. But on my situation, I had a therapist that was teaching me by theory, oh yeah, you should set your boundaries, you should do this, you should do that. But when I said boundaries, she's like, oh, I don't know if we can work together. And I asked her, why can't you just stop being abusive with me? Why can't you just respect the boundary and continue working with me? And there was no response to that. Uh, Even though I worked 2 years with this therapist, I don't know what is her approach. I cannot tell you. It's mystery. It was mystery to me, but I noticed this uncomfortable situations with therapists. And if you do notice, if you do experience something like that, I did, and I speak with several friends of mine that do therapy, and I ask them how it's like to do therapy in their own words, in their own experience, and if they do experience something like that, what they would recommend me. And all of them were like shocked. They were like, no, cut it right away, this therapist obviously is having some personal issues. um, and so I stopped doing therapy. But I just wanted to share these thoughts with you guys. If you ever experience abuse from your therapist, write it down below. I'm curious to know about if that's happened to another people or just to me, because I am not a Native American person, which I adopt. Although if you watch until here, thank you guys for being here. I know you're just 29, but I don't care what's the number here. I just want to share things that I find interesting and inspiring. If you find this video, if you learn something new, or if it makes you think about life, you can just press like or share and subscribe. That would be your thank you for me, or just write me a comment below. Thank you and bye bye.